Morning, Pickles.
Morning, Leroy.
Pickles, I need to talk to you about something.
What's that?
Last night, when it was really dark and I was asleep, something woke me up. It was so loud, and it sounded like a cat screaming.
Oh, that was me. I was practicing my harp.
Your harp? Since when did you play the harp, Pickles?
Well, last week we heard the story about David, and I really like him and want to be more like him.
What's that got to do with the harp?
Well, David played the harp and sang. Did you know he used to play the harp for the king when he couldn't sleep?
I'm guessing he played better than you did last night. Ha ha!
I'll keep practicing.
Good idea. But maybe not so late at night.
Let's hear today's story. I think David might be in it again.
My name is Jeremy, and today is the next in the series about heroes in a pickle. Now, you probably all know the famous story of David and Goliath. Well, today we're going to hear about the amazing story of two best friends, which follows on right after that. The story of David and Jonathan. Saul was king, and Saul had a son called Jonathan. David and Jonathan became best friends and were inseparable. In fact, it says in the Bible that Jonathan loved David as himself. They were such good friends that they made a promise to remain friends forever. And to show that he meant it, Jonathan even gave David his prince's robe, his tunic, even his sword, his bow, and his belt. All the things that were really important to a prince. Meanwhile, because David had done such a great job defeating Goliath, Saul asked David to help him with the army. Everything that David did worked out brilliantly. And after a while, everyone was so pleased with David that King Saul got a little bit jealous of him, particularly that things were going so well for David. One day, when David was playing the harp, because he was a really good musician as well, Saul picked up a spear and threw it towards David. Luckily, David dodged and managed to escape. Saul then got really mad and told Jonathan and all his servants to go out and kill David. But of course, imagine being asked to go and kill your best friend. Jonathan wasn't going to do that. So he went out to go and find David, and he warned him about what Saul was trying to do. Then Jonathan talked to Saul and reminded his father that David had saved the Israelites from the Philistines. Fortunately, King Saul had a change of heart, and he made a solemn promise. As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death. War broke out against the Philistines, and David went off to fight. The Philistines were beaten good and proper and ran away. Great, so David's safe. Think again, folks. Saul just isn't as good at keeping promises as Jonathan. David was a real hero, and people loved him so much. So Saul got super jealous all over again. Later on, while David was playing the harp for Saul, Saul's jealousy overwhelmed him, and he threw his spear at David, but it just missed him and stuck in the wall instead. This time, David got the message, and he ran for his life. Now Saul is really mad. So he sends his soldiers to David and his wife Michal's house to watch it overnight and then kill him in the morning. Michal realizes what's going on and knows that David is in perilous danger. So she tells David that he simply has to escape that night. Otherwise, he's going to be killed by Saul's guard. So she lets him down out of the window, and David makes good his escape. Meanwhile, Michal thinks how she can trick the soldiers that are looking for David. So she makes a dummy David, and puts some clothes on it and some goat's hair on the head and sticks it in the bed. Next morning, when the soldiers come knocking, she tells them that poor David is feeling a little bit under the weather. So the soldiers go and tell Saul. Saul is furious, and he says to bring him in the bed to the palace so he can kill him himself. The soldiers go back to the house, and when they go up into David's room, they of course realise that they've had a trick played on them. David has escaped. David ran away to find the prophet Samuel at a place called Ramah and told him everything that Saul had done. Then Samuel and David moved on to another place called Naioth. King Saul found out where they were, so he sent his soldiers to go and capture him. As soon as the soldiers arrived, and they saw a group of prophets prophesying and praying with Samuel leading them, and God's Spirit came upon the soldiers and prophesying. Saul was told about this, so he sent more men to do the job. They too ended up prophesying and not capturing David, so he sent a third batch of men. And guess what? They too prophesied. You'd think that Saul would get the message by now. Finally, Saul thinks if you need a job done, do it yourself. So he goes off to do the job. And yes, you guessed it, the Spirit of God came on Saul too, and he prophesied. He took off all of his clothes, as you do, and lay naked on the ground for a day and night praying. At this strange turn of events, David takes his chance to escape again and runs away to find Jonathan. They decide to renew their vows of friendship and come up with a cunning and secret plan to check and see if David is in any further danger when Saul returns. The thing is, this plan involves small children and arrows. What could possibly go wrong? Jonathan's plan is that he will suss out whether Saul is happy with David or jealous and still wants him killed, and then come out to a local field with a boy and shoot some arrows at a target. When the boy goes to collect the arrows, if he says to the boy that the arrows are at one side, then that will be the signal that David is safe and he can return. But if he says that the arrows are beyond the target, then that will mean that he must go away because David is still in real danger. That night, Saul hosted a special banquet, but David was not there. Saul wanted to know where David was, and Jonathan told Saul that he'd gone to Bethlehem. Saul knew that Jonathan was lying and got really mad because he knew that Jonathan was covering for David. "Now bring him to me, for he must die!" The next morning, Jonathan went out to the field with his arrows and a small boy. He fired the arrows beyond the target as a signal to David that Saul was still trying to kill him. As soon as the boy had left the field, David came out of hiding from behind the wall, and they both cried and hugged and said goodbye to each other because they knew that they would not be able to see each other for a long time.
Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. He's higher than a skyscraper, and He's deeper than a submarine. He's wider than the universe, and beyond my wildest dreams. And He's known me, and He's loved me since before the world began. How wonderful to be a part of God's amazing plan. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and He holds us in His hands. Our God is a great big God. great big God, and he holds us in his hands. He's higher than a skyscraper, and he's deeper than a submarine. He's wider than the universe, and beyond my wildest dreams. And he's known me, and he's loved me since before the world began. How wonderful to be a part of God's amazing plan. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and he holds us in his hands. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and he holds us in his hand. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God. Our God is a great big God, and he holds us in his hand. 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 And he holds us in his hand.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for that story. It wasn't incredible? So much going on in that story, so much action. We're thinking this week about friendship, and I was having a think about the kind of things that are better to do with friends and just aren't as good when we're on our own. So I had a go at some of them to try it out. So here I am playing swing ball by myself. Guess who won? It was me. And then I tried to fold a blanket by myself, and I had to keep walking up and down in order to fold it. And at one point, the blanket just blew everywhere, and there was no one there to help me catch it. You'll also notice the paddling pool behind, and it's so much more fun playing in a paddling pool with other people, isn't it? Then I had a go at a game. Now, you can play computer games by yourself, but it's much more fun playing with other people. I love playing Lego games. I love playing them with my nephew. Now, God never meant for us to be alone. When Jesus was on earth, he chose 12 close friends to walk with him and to learn from him, but also to support him. He knew the importance of friendship. So I wonder who your friends are. Who are the closest friends? Who are the people you could call on for help when you need it? Or they might call on you when they need help too. Have a chat amongst yourselves. Who are your closest friends? And what in particular do they do to support you and care for you? In that story, we met Jonathan, and Jonathan was King Saul's son. Now, King Saul started off as a good king, but then he turned against God and he stopped doing what God asked him to do. So God anointed David to be the next king, but not yet. He had to wait. And remember last week, he defeated Goliath, and he carried on being loyal and looking after those sheep and playing music for King Saul when he couldn't get to sleep. And he was trusted in the palace. And he became best friends with Jonathan. And the two of them hung out together, and Jonathan would do anything to protect David, and it was probably the other way around too. David would do anything to protect Jonathan. But in this particular circumstance, it was Jonathan that had to protect David, because King Saul would get really angry and really jealous. He was jealous of how good David was at leading the army. and doing all these amazing things. And he could see that the people really loved David, and he wanted that for himself. So he threw a spear at David, not just once, but twice. So David had to get away, and he thought it might be temporary. And then Jonathan hatched that plan to shoot an arrow and to tell David through that message whether it was safe to come back. And it wasn't. David had to go away. And Jonathan and David were really, really sad that they had to be parted. But they knew they were still friends. I wonder if you have any friends who are really far away. I had a message today from my friend Shamira. She lives in the Philippines, and that's really far away. We're going to have a Zoom call on Friday and a catch up. When Shamira and I used to work together at my last church, we would always pray together and support each other, and we became really close friends, and I miss her a lot. I've got other friends like that in Mexico and in Minnesota who live really far away. But I've also got friends here in Abingdon who support me and care for me, and who I can support too. So let's thank God for our friends. In the booklet there is a craft for today, and it says, "Thank you for being my friend." I wonder whether you want to make that bracelet for somebody and give it to them this week. Maybe it's someone in your family, maybe it's a friend, but you could make that bracelet to encourage them and thank them for all that they have done for you. Next week there isn't a Heroes video, and there are no Heroes groups, because it's the 4th of July, and on Thy Kingdom Come Prayer Initiative it's Thank You Sunday. So we're going to have a chance to say thank you to all sorts of people. So this week we're saying thank you to our friends, but next week we might want to think about people who serve in the church. So we have got 3 picnics going on around town. So there's 2 in Abingdon and 1 in Didcot. And we'd love for you to sign up for one of those picnics. Bring your family, bring some card and some pens, and we're going to have the opportunity to make some sort of thank you for those people who serve in church. And we'll make sure that that thank you gets to the right people. So let's thank God for our friends right now. I wonder whether you want to imagine you're holding your friends in your hands, and we're going to lift those friends to God. And maybe you've got friends that you want to pray for, they're going through a really tough time, or maybe you just want to say thank you for them. So we're going to hold our hands out and imagine we're holding those friends in our hands. And as we say amen, we're going to lift them up in the air to God. So you ready? Thank you, God, for all of the friends that you have put in our lives. Thank you for the way that they love us and care for us. Thank you for the fun they are to hang out with. Thank you that we have been able to support them too. Help us to be good friends. And Lord, we want to pray for any of our friends who are going through a really difficult time. Would you be close to them right now? Amen. Amen. Amazing. There's one more thing that I want to tell you about. And that is that this summer we're not holding a holiday club. We're instead going to run an activity week during New Wine Week. And there's space in the barn for several families to gather together, hopefully about 16 families. We're going to be watching the videos from New Wine. We're going to have a live band. We're going to do crafts just like we would at Holiday Club. But you'll need to bring a grown-up to the session with you too. We need you to sign up as soon as possible. That would be amazing. And over that weekend, there are also 3 huge events going on at church, which we would love you to join us for. There's a barbecue on the Friday night. There's a cream tea on the Saturday afternoon. And on Sunday, we'd love you to join us for a picnic. Please do check out the news sheet on the church website for more information about those 3 events. There's also a video being shown in the main service today to tell you all about them. But we'd love to regather as church, reconnect, and support each other as friends and as a community. Please sign up for those events as soon as possible to help us with our planning. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye.
David and Jonathan were really good friends.
If Jonathan hadn't protected David, I don't know what might have happened. He really was in a pickle.
Talking of friends, I've got a joke for you, Pickles. What do you call monkeys who are best friends?
I don't know. What do you call monkeys who are best friends?
Primates.
Brilliant! Thanks, Leroy. By the way, I've made you this bracelet.
What does it say? Thank you for being my friend. Oh, you're a great friend too. Thanks, Pickles.
Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.